Well, welcome, Max, on a rainy day.
Rainy Sunday, Broadstairs.
Yeah.
Typical English summer.
Sunshine and showers.
Yes.
Well, on the way here, we got some messages about blood group B and the PGLFs.
Okay.
From a researcher that's been with the BASIS project for a very long time, is doing a heck of a lot of work, specifically involving the Nazi bases,
right,
the concentration camps that Barry King is referred to in Germany, and the use of concentration camp victims in precise blood groups. And you concurred that she was just messaged me saying that the Germans are very interested in blood group B, and they use this in the programmable generator life forms so they could then take grey souls.
Right, and you superimpose that into the body. Okay, I think that the Germans are not only interested in blood group B. I think they're also extremely interested in any of the rhesus negative blood, particularly O negative and actually AB negative. AB negative is the rarest of all of the rhesus negative blood groups. But going back to B, B positive or B negative blood group works like a hive blood group, works like a hive mind blood group. Not to say that anybody who has B blood is not an individual themselves, it's just on a collective level. They are working for a single agenda without knowing it. So if you could amass a huge amount of people with blood group B, then you could have sort of an army working for you, and each individual would be unknown that they are actually part of the collective.
Well, that would be some kind of a gang stalking situation then, where you could get an awful lot of people who would respond to that.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of people who have blood group B.
Now, it's interesting from my point of view, and also some more work that's been, data that's been published, is on, Andrew Power has written a very important book about Ireland, Land of the Pharaohs.
Yes.
And Ben, the hospital porter, has done a bit of an analysis on that and had a chat with Andrew Power. He's Andrew Power, somebody who's did some research about the matrix control of Ireland, and how the Battle of the Boyne was actually a ritual and not a battle. But the important thing about this is another person has found out that Northern Ireland is very highly rhesus negative.
Okay.
So from the point of view of programming people...
Yes, it's a lot easier to do. And that's why you have, you know, Northern Ireland is a extraordinarily locked down facility, you know, and okay, the upside to having O negative blood or rhesus negative blood is that it has and absorbs a much higher amount of oxygen into it. So the body allows far more oxygen into the blood. So for example, if you were a runner, or if you were a fighter, or if you did anything physical, your endurance would be longer and you would be more explosive. The downside to having rhesus negative blood is that they run out of steam very quickly. They have to stop and they have to regroup and then go again. The O positive blood has a much longer endurance. It's not explosive. So if you had an army of rhesus negative an army of rhesus negative, then they would be excellent in a very short term. They could destroy something that's necessary very quickly. It's just that only lasts for a very short period of time. They're very explosive, but then they burn out quickly.
So you'd use them hit hard,
and then pull out, and then use your endurance.
Yes.
But they do hit harder than any other of the bloodstreams, and then there's the nature of the blue blood, because the oxygen into the blood, then it's a higher copper content. Thus, when oxygen hits the blood, it turns a slightly bluish color.
So is that related to the Greys or reptilians or the two families?
Most all of the reptilian beings, the Alpha Draconis, and well, I mean, if there's 6 or 7 types of reptilians that are on this planet. Some snakes, some velociraptor looking, some actually look like dinosaurs, but generally they have, the shape-shifting ones all have rhesus negative blood. You don't, okay. Okay, so with the super soldier topic, the benefits of having the rhesus negative are that it is easier for the queen, quote unquote, queen bee to take control of all the rhesus negative, because they are working like that. But they do have O positives working also with them. It's just the O positive are a lot more difficult to control, but through trauma, I mean, it's like we were talking about earlier, a lot of the children die when they go through this process, but the ones who do survive, the O positives that do survive, are extremely beneficial to that, because the endurance goes on and on and on and on and on.
So what about the current situation? The last interview you mentioned a lot of the children had died in your program.
Yeah.
Could you really describe what your program involved? And of course this connects us with James, who's now been arrested.
Okay. So I have flash sort of memories, and they start from really when I was at the first school that I went to, which was in Sussex, and I started to have memories then. And then after that, they were sporadic. So then after that, I sort of remember so first of all, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, then nothing. And then more like 11, 12, 13 years old. And then when I sort of blocked it out. Then as I reached my mid to late 20s, I wasn't able to block it out anymore. I think that I began to use drugs or alcohol because I didn't want to face what was going on.
When did you start this? When did this happen?
In terms of self-abuse in that way, well, it started when I was very, very, very young. When I was 2, 3, 4, 5, I have multiple memories of things coming into my room, and it always happened in the room. And they were some nasty things.
What do you mean by nasty things?
Sort of intrusive sexual things. A lot. I remember seeing a lot of witches, sort of minds, stereotypical looking sort of witches. I would be taken out of my bed. I'd sort of float up above my bed, float up through the roof of the house, up further and further, and then I'd go through a set of black clouds. I'd go above the black clouds, and then I'd sort of see even almost like a stereotypical looking Macbeth, the witches of Macbeth, sort of around a cauldron, and they'd be cackling. And then when I'd see that, I'd go into shock and I'd freeze, and then I'd kind of black out and feel myself lying back in the bed again. So because this went on continuously when I was very young, and I used to call for my parents, and then after a while they stopped coming, so I had to start dealing with it myself. Now, when I was 15, 16, 17, I'd sort of forgotten that had happened. When I was 15, 16, 17, something happened, and something triggered me, and I think it was probably a very close friend of mine said something, and I heard a click in my head, and I remembered all the things that had happened again.
What happened?
All the things I just talked about,
Okay.
which were the unpleasant things as a kid. They all came back at once.
I mean, do you think, when did that happen? I mean, do you think you were being deprogrammed or something?
I think something was happening where, the main thing that they didn't want to me is to ever remember anything like this. They want me to think that I've had a straight, normal sort of life with its ups and downs that everybody had, but my reality is this, and that's what it was. And when I started to remember when this happened when I was 17, I freaked out, I panicked. And when I panicked, I had all these flashes back that when the sun started to come down, I started to get this terrible, terrible feel like something bad was going to happen.
So what was the sun?
I don't know what it was really, but I was fine. I would usually, this is in England, I would usually be fine up until about 6 or 7 o'clock. And then when the sun started going down and started getting dark, all these feelings started to invoke inside of me, like whatever happened when I was a kid was about to happen again. So I started to self-medicate, and I used to drink wine with my...
What do you mean by self-medicating?
So I used to drink wine with my mum when I was 17, 18, and I found when this started to happen, I found I'd have a glass of wine or I'd have a beer or whatever, and slightly these feelings and these memories would subside. So I'd sort of worked out, well, shit, you know, if I don't want to feel these things anymore, so I found something that will repress them. So that was around 17, 18, and when I learned the medication, how to self-medicate, it sort of perpetuated itself from there. So then I learned, okay, well, I don't want to feel that way, I'm going to do whatever I can to not feel that way. So what happens is, when you keep repressing and keep repressing and keep repressing, it sort of becomes like a boiling point. You can only repress to a certain extent before everything comes out in one go. There had been a number of times through my 20s when I had realized that that addiction had become part of me, not for fun, but it had become part of a way of life for me, because I didn't want to address any of those things. And it does work very well, because if you use that, then you can basically believe or convince yourself that none of this stuff ever happened. Leading on from there, as I turned towards 30 years old, I had a complete snap. In
the Monarch program,
yes,
it seems that once you hit about 30, the Monarch program starts to decline.
Well, it seems to me that the alters and the programming start to bleed through and break down around that age. So and I was part of alpha programming and beta programming. Alpha being there's delta programming as well. So I was actually thrown into all of those things. But they started to bleed through. I turned 30, just past 30, 31, and there was nothing I could do about it. Delta.
Those categories of programs, just
yeah. Delta programming generally is a form of assassination, or a form of getting information through physical means. Yes. So this is it's sort of your basic military attack programming. That's what that is. That's Delta. Beta programming is used 80%, usually 80%, which is the Monarch, 80% of women, and there are 20% of men which are used, which is also sexual programming. So giving and receiving information through sexual means. So a spy would be able to go meet up with somebody, have sex with them, and then download the information that was necessary from the person to collect it into their cells, then go back to whoever you are working for, have sex with this person, and then download the information to this person. So it is all done through that means.
Now, how do they do the download?
How do they do it?
When you say download, you sort of look at somebody's eyes.
Okay, so as soon as the sexual act is done, then the two energy fields of the people merge. And if you are shown or trained in a specific way, most often unconsciously, then this information is then downloaded to the energy field of that person. And then you can be hooked up to a machine, or you can have sex with somebody else, and then that person gets the information. It's being done a lot by the Russians. They're sending out 13, 14, 15-year-old girls out into certain areas in the US and the UK, and sex acts will be done with high businessmen, and the information then will be taken and given back to where the KGB, if that exists. You know what I mean?
So it's been still in use. It's very effective.
It's very effective because nobody thinks that is the way that it's done.
And
Absolutely.
then the whole point is that the actual person themselves doesn't know they've got the information.
Yeah, absolutely. Most often.
Right. And then the other thing is that if you get rid of that person, your resources, you haven't really expended too much resources.
No, because there's plenty of other ones who can do the job again.
Now, is this where these children are collected? I mean,
okay, so going back to that, so when I was talking about the children who were involved, so I'm going to mention Montauk, which is just off of New York. I'm not exactly sure that I was in Montauk, but when I look at it, it is very familiar to me. But wherever I was, it was an identical layout and setup to the Montauk experiment. And then there are a number of other ones just exactly like that.
Now, this is very important because Lisa is doing an awful lot of work on this, and she's collaborating with Peter Moon, who's written a lot of the Montauk
Love Peter
books.
Moon, yes.
You know, there's a whack of stuff going on there, connecting with this concentration camps.
Yeah.
But there's smoke signals which indicate that Rudloe Manor,
Yes.
And Warminster, very close to Devizes in Wiltshire, may have had some kind of involvement with this stuff, but that's only just little whiffs of smoke. The thing is that a previous soldier who's spoken is saying that there's something that the stuff that he was exposed to was in the artillery. It's just horrendous stuff.
Yeah. In terms of that, what I have seen is I've seen those spiders that are about. I have to be. When I see them, I'm in an in-between state. It's not like I can look up and see them now, and it's just before I fall asleep, or if I'm in like an in-between state, that's when I see them. And they're about this big, and they seem more mechanical than actual beings. And I've seen them many times, and sometimes maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 of them crawling across the ceiling. Not only that, when I was living in an apartment in Los Angeles, I fell asleep one time, and I knew I was under attack at that moment, and I heard these things rushing and across the ground, and they were squeaking and they were sort of scuttling around. And when I looked at them, I could see that they sort of looked. I know it's going to sound strange, like gremlins. They looked like actual from the movie Gremlins, and they sort of seemed to be mischievous things to cause sort of more chaos, and they always seemed to be around when there was these shadow beings around too. So whatever these little scuttle things are controlled. And
well, a lot of people are now seeing these things.
The ones that run along the ground?
Scuttlers. I saw them first in a transmitter. Kerry Cassidy says she's seen them. Lisa's seen them. Some of the crop circle people have seen them. Big things, very large ones.
Yeah, these ones I see are about this big, and they look like gremlins. They have ears like that. They have teeth. They make noise and they laugh. They're just like mischievous, like running around things.
And they're not nice.
No, they're not nice, but they're not evil. But they're mischievous, and they're working for something. They sort of hide things, and they sort of they bring around sort of negative energy too. That ties in with something that, if I can just say this ties in with something very bizarre that happened. I was living in an apartment 222, which ties in with these things. This was in Los Angeles, and one morning I got a letter in the mail, and the letter was addressed to me, and it was from something called the Neptune Society. And I'd driven when driving down Ventura Boulevard in Los Angeles. There's this huge building. You can't really see, there's windows, but you can't really see anything about it. And on the top it says Neptune Society. That's all, there's nothing else. So I'd seen it since I was a kid. I'd never knew anything about it. I received a letter in the mail, and it said the Neptune Society. I opened the letter, and all the letter was saying, it says, "Dear Mr. Spiers, have you ever considered being cremated when you die? Cremation," and it gives me all these reasons why cremation is a far better way to go than being buried. And it was about this long, and it was signed at the bottom, "If you have any more queries or anything else, please don't hesitate to contact us." So I left it on the side of the breakfast area where I was, and then I went to sleep that night. Well, at 3 o'clock in the morning I woke up, and I heard this crackling sound, and I sat up, and the whole of my kitchen was on fire. All the front of the breakfast area was on fire. The food was on fire. The flames were like coming off like this.
Now, was this actual or virtual?
It was actual flames.
All right.
All the top of the thing was burned, and the letter that was on there had completely burned out. I ran up, I jumped, I put the fire out, and also all the gas was turned on. All the gas from the oven was turned on.
Ah.
Now,
well, that would be one way of cremating you.
Yes, I thought that was extremely...
Probably doesn't do a very good job, though.
I had feelings it was connected to the Hellfire Club. And because
you mentioned the Hellfire Club is interesting because I think it involves Jimmy Savile and also the methodology of Marie Kayali's daughters
Really?
Attempted incineration in hospital.
They like that. There's something because there's something about the element of fire which allows these beings to come
the
through.
Ring of Fire.
Yes. Well, there you go back to the Johnny Cash song. That's the Ring of Fire. Johnny, he's talking all about that. That's what he's talking about. It's a hellfire ritual. But when I got up that morning to leave the house, there was a black Suburban, tinted windows Suburban sitting outside the front of my building, and on the license plate it said "Blow you up." And as I woke up,
so they were basic. Oh, that was in the dream.
This is real.
Oh, this was real.
The flames were real. Waking up was real. The car was real.
So they're basically letting you know.
That was 2011 that happened. And you know what day it happened? It happened on August the 12th. And August the 12th is a very specific day because it is connected when Sirius is at its highest point in the sky. August 11th, 12th, and 13th are called the dog days because the dog star is the most visible. Now, Crowley got married on August the 12th because he sees it as when Sirius has its highest effect on this planet, and he was trying to bring in an
That wouldn't happen every August the 12th, would it?
What's that?
It wouldn't happen every year, would it?
What doesn't happen every year?
That Sirius would have its most...
Yes, every single year.
Okay.
And at that point, so there are negative and positive factions coming from Sirius. He was trying to open doorways to bring the certain ones from Sirius through here. When I started to get close to what was going on with that and what was going on with the dog days, they wanted me out, and I was okay. It was fine. There was a couple of other things on the 13th of August and the 14th of August, there was a couple more attacks that I had. Out of nowhere, my whole apartment became infested with cockroaches within a 24-hour period. Cockroaches coming out of everywhere. So
now, is that an actual placement of them, or is it somebody did materialize them in? Or?
I think that I was being. It was the heaviest attack that I've ever had.
I mean, this is the kind of thing you only sort of see in horror movies.
Yes, and it was absolutely real. On top of that...
So how did you get rid of them? What happened?
I went and told the landlady. I said, this is going on, and I had to stay out of the apartment for a week, and she sprayed everything and got rid of the majority of them. They didn't come back.
And has this happened to other people? I mean, was it just a dirty apartment, or...
No,
this was a block. I mean, was this something...
No, it was a very nice apartment. Yeah. And it was... But then the number of the apartment was 222, which is... It's a resonance of me because that's my birthday, 222. But
and the important thing about resonances is that's a mechanism of getting things through.
Yes, 222 is also a doorway. Right next to the front door of the apartment, there was a hall, like an archway like this, and 3 o'clock in the morning again. On the 13th, I think, I thought I got out of bed. I went to go over. I heard a noise, and something came out of the wall. What it was, I think I was dreaming, but I was half dreaming, half awake. It looked like the stereotypical what predator looks like. I don't know what they are. I had never seen one before, but when it came close to me like this, it was still for a second, and then it screamed in my face to invoke as much fear as possible. I had learned at that point, I was had a deep understanding of solfeggio and sound harmonics, and I knew the harmonics to do with my voice to try and help it, to try and get rid of it. I did this sound, which is the HU, H-U. It's a certain frequency sound, and when I did it, it sort of got back into there. This period of time...
This is important. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be that sound from anybody else's voice. For your voice,
yeah,
it works.
Yes. Yeah, the HU sound, yes.
Yeah.
You can find that on YouTube.
Yeah, but for other people, it wouldn't necessarily work. Because of basically the resonance of the voice is the important thing.
Yes. There are certain sounds, there is a certain sound that they cannot stand, that they panic and they run away from. And
well, like in this spoof science fiction comedy film, Alien Invasions from Mars or whatever it is.
Oh, Mars Attacks.
Mars Attacks.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of truth in that movie.
They used yodeling country music as a means.
That's funny. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was I stayed in that apartment.
Just while we're on the movie, anything in that's as true that...
Well, I don't know that movie as well. I know They Live, and in the movie They Live, and in They Live, there is a sound, there is a frequency, I don't know if you remember it towards the end, that Roddy Piper goes to, and it's a frequency that's being beamed out, which enables these aliens to look in human form, and when he breaks this frequency, then they're all seen. Yeah, I've noticed since we've changed to digital now, my senses have become extremely heightened, and even when I'm just listening to the TV, or even when you turn the volume down, I hear this sound frequency coming from the television that completely messes with my pineal gland.
Now this is important because another member of the base's back room, so to speak,
right.
The thing is that he had devised a device to encrypt records on CDs so that it wouldn't be able to be copied.
Right.
But it was a type of acoustic thing as opposed to some kind of digital trademark encryption.
Right.
And when he played this in the record executive of the board, a number of the board just freaked out because they were reptilian. So he
completely freaked out, I'm sure, yeah.
So there's a particular sound
that they cannot stand, yes. Because it alters the holographic projection that they're keeping. And I think it's a misconception that they are actually shape-shifting. Some are, but it's a misconception. Yeah. What they're actually doing is altering your visual cortex to make you think you're seeing them that way.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
And this is very important as well, because you can that's the truth. They're not actually looking that way. They've just manipulated your mind to think that they are.
And that must work through all kind of visual media. Otherwise, you'd see a lot of these aliens walking around on TV.
Absolutely, yeah. I've noticed a lot of newsreaders, because they're doing that as an indoctrination and conditioning. If you look at newsreaders, because they're the ones who are in your house every day. Look carefully at the newsreaders. It's slowly drip conditioning you to accept.
BBC is the worst, I think.
Yes.
I mean, ITV, I can't watch it.
I heard somewhere that the true acronym of BBC, and it's not British Broadcasting Company, and I can't remember it now, but you might want to look into that. Yeah. Also, it comes up to 7. Nice. B2, and C3. 7 is the number of the serpent.
Right. And it's interesting that in the early days of broadcasting, it was a British Broadcasting Company.
Ah, okay.
Not corporations.
Not corporations, so now it's, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of things, there's some radio amateurs who are twigged about broadcasting. Something happened.
Yes.
They're beginning to see, like, when broadcasting started, and we adopted the types of broadcasting we use.
Sure.
They've noticed that something started to happen in society.
Yes.
And this, of course, links with my stuff with Caroline and all that sort of stuff.
Can I just go?
Waffling about MK Ultra switching off at 30.
Yeah. Okay, so I can tell you what happened then. So in March of 2008, I was living in a shared house in the north part of the San Fernando Valley, which is in Los Angeles, and I started. I mean, I've never had voices in my head. I never had that. I never had that before. I just sort of had an understanding. But that night in March of 2008, right around, just after when Heath Ledger died, and Heath Ledger, he played the Joker in Batman.
Oh.
He died on January the 22nd, which is interesting because the number 22 is in sync with the Joker card and the Fool card in the Tarot card deck. And so there was, there's all the...
and being a Joker and all that.
Absolutely, yes.
So you're suggesting that basically the Batman movies has got some kind of ritual magic involved?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, absolutely. And
why was he murdered? What did he...
He was murdered... his real father... wasn't the father that that is shown to the public. His real father was a very famous actor, and I've forgotten his name now. He did a lot of theatre in the 50s and 60s. I forget his name. When I remember it, I'll let you know.
Why is it necessary to have a different father than your real one?
Well, they often will take...
In the public domain?
They'll often take, because they don't want any association, and they like to try experiments, and a lot of it is lab rat stuff to test out. But
I mean, there's also, you get lumbered with being so-and-so's father, and nobody watches you because of that.
Right.
Oh, I think you just make sure your plug's in.
Anyways, so in
yeah.
March of 2008, some strange things started happening to me. I had some extremely vivid dreams, and then I got taken out of my body and shown that my life, as I thought it was not. The memories that I had, my childhood memories, were not what I quite thought they were. And for about a 2 weeks period of time, I was shown memory after memory after memory of what was really going on. And I remember being taken to underground facilities at different points, some of them in Sussex, some of them in Kent, and some of them with people who I knew from school, but would have no clue that they were involved at all. And I would sort of come to on a mini bus, or a bus where there were 3 of us on one side, 3 of us on the other side, and sort of in a dazed state. And then we'd go somewhere and then black out again. And this sort of led for me to, I was seeing it from in the corner of the room, but we would being given tests, and they would give something.
Who was giving you?
Who was giving? Okay, so there was a woman at the front.
How was she dressed? I mean,
she was dressed not uniform, but very well dressed. You know, dressed up as if she was a banker or a businesswoman.
Well, that must imply that it's in some very salubrious environment where she has to be dressed.
Yes, and there was also...
In other words, a place that's in public domain.
Yes, but it was underground. So it was below. I'm not talking seriously underground, but it was below wherever.
I mean, you were taken down in the lifts. How do you know you were underground?
Well, I was driven down. There was a slope that we were driven down under, and then it was down there. Me and these 5 other kids that were there, some boys, some girls, but when we were there, we were sort of in a dazed state, so we weren't communicating with each other.
Can you remember any way in how you were collected?
Really, I only remember all of a sudden being in the van. I don't remember being taken. I just remember all of a sudden being in the van, and being sitting in sort of like rows of desks. And then it was very cold, and there was no warmth coming from the people that were there. There was a male who was standing by the door, a female at the front dressed as I was saying, and then somebody would bring round sort of, but it wasn't a Rubik's Cube though, but it was like an unfold. It was like there's something called Rubik's Magic. And it's where you unfold it like this, and then you have to put it in again and fold it to try and make. And they were doing tests to see how fast certain ones were able to do it.
That explains. It's one way of testing a form of visual conceptual thinking.
Cognitive, yes. And I felt like, but when they put it down initially, I was like, what am I supposed to do? I have no clue what I'm supposed to do. And then they said, just do it. And then I started touching it, and as soon as I started touching it, I immediately knew how to do it, and I did it very fast. So some of the other kids, and the kids were at the time when this was going on were about 5, 6, 7 years old. So I was looking back at a previous memory rather than something that was happening now.
Is this painful to remember?
It's because it's so because it doesn't fit into the timeline of what I thought my life was. It's sort of very confusing. It doesn't make sense. Who allowed that to happen? Why was that okay? Where were my parents at the time? I remember, and this sort of ties in as well, when I was living in Lewes, which is in Sussex as well, I was very close friends with a little girl. Her name was Meredith Kennedy, and I was very close with her. Both of her parents were scientists, and often they used to take her and I to Sussex University lab. There was a lab there, and I remember getting in the car and being driven there, but then when we'd get driven there, the mother or the father would leave, and then we'd be left in the car, and then some strange things would happen in the car. I kept thinking the car was rolling, and then sort of went dizzy, came back again, but I have flashes of memories going inside of the lab, Now recently I've looked into it more, and Sussex University is an arm. There is an arm of Tavistock that works right out of Sussex University. And my very close friend at the time, Meredith Kennedy, her mother also worked for Stanford Research Institute. So she used to go back and forth from Stanford to Sussex University. And Stanford then was actually continuing the work that Tavistock had done. Which began by Freud and some other ones there, so that they could completely understand how to split the mind and basically program one personality into the left brain and one personality into the right brain, where each one, I mean, it's sort of similar to trauma-based mind control, where you create alters, but this was very specific, so they would play...
So they could do that without the trauma?
This particular one was being done without trauma. I mean, there was enough trauma that I was left there without knowing. So it's not working.
The trauma thing is a crude way of doing it.
The trauma, they're not really interested in they're interested in trying out all different types of methods. This particular one, which was done by a doctor called Robert Spiers, Sperry. And he was one of the Nazi scientists, and what he wanted to try and do was to see if he could play sounds, words, stories, music to one side of the brain, and then play completely separate one to the other side of the brain. So then it confuses the brain and splits it off. So then you can program one and program the other, which then creates massive confusion as the child gets older, because it's not sure whether it's coming or going, sort of thing. This also induces addiction, because then they created pharmaceuticals that were specifically made for people who'd gone through that trauma. A lot of the opiates that were created in the United States were made specifically because they knew that these kids were going to search that out and find it and become addicts to it.
And this is important because in the Channel 4 program Confessions of an Alien Abductee, they made a big issue of Chantel and the Kentucky Fried Chicken. So the placement of Kentucky Fried Chicken with the special mix in that, it's been described by others as an abduction food.
Really?
Yes. So the use of that could be a double trigger. So
KFC in itself is a basic anagram of fuck, right? If you just switch those around the other way. Well, also
is the old grandfather image on that a trigger as well?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And the grandfather image on there, if somebody from Asia looks at this man's face, it looks Asian to them. If a white person looks at it, it looks white to them. Right. It's very, very cleverly done like that. And the man who was behind KFC doesn't quite look like that, but he was also a master programmer, handler, slave handler. And when the trauma was done by him, you would be shown a face of this KFC, the actual thing. So you'd flash that face, so you'd keep being drawn to it.
Now, I have to say that me even mentioning that person's name will trigger her. I'll get a huge amount of abuse immediately for saying that.
Okay.
Because it triggers, and I think that means that the relevant people involved at Channel 4 were deliberately triggering. And it should be interesting to note that Marie Kayali, when she was waiting at the station to come down to do the 4 programs she did with me in Wiltshire, met the producer of that program. But anyway, that's a side issue.
Really? Okay.
Totally random issues.
Yes.
Improbable probability.
Yes. Now, towards the end of this thing that happened to me in March, I was spending time with two, a male and a female, who were older than me, 20 years older than me. And I don't want to mention their names because I don't want to cause them any trouble, but I do know that they were assets, and that I can mention the name of one of them. His name was James Chandler. And he was maybe in his mid to late 50s. He grew up on an Air Force base. He grew up from when he was
That's a familiar name. I've heard something like that somewhere
now
before.
Chandler, you take the C off, you have handler. Now, when I was going through this massive trauma, in this onslaught of memories that came back in March, he said to me, look, come round, everything's going to be fine, come round here. And I was having an extreme, I didn't know where I was. I would wake up, go to my car in the morning, I'd look on the ground of my car, and I would see receipts that said that I'd bought something at 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was sound asleep in bed at that time. So, no, I found the receipts. So what had been happening
was there any dirt in your clothes or anything at all to indicate that you'd been outside physically?
I woke up with clothes on. So I had gone out and I had done something and bought something, and I had absolutely no clue. So anyway, I went round to these people's houses, and I sat down on the ground in the house, and this was these two people were there, and they said, "Max, why don't you have a lay down? Have a lay down. You know, you don't seem very well. You're bright red. Nothing's. You know, you seem like you need." So I lay down on the ground, put my head on a cushion. As soon as I put my head on the cushion, I felt like I sunk into the ground. I then became paralyzed. I couldn't move my legs or my arms. I couldn't open my eyes, but I could hear everything that was going on. Within about a couple of minutes after that, I could hear bells ringing, and I could hear these things, sort of incense smelling. And I heard a chain like this being, like there was something here, and it was like incense being spun around like this. I heard the changing of clothes, and I heard ringing, stuff like that. Now I heard them talking about that that they had been waiting to place whatever this ritual was going on. They had been waiting for it, and it had to be done in this house, and they were going to try and attempt to place, I don't know what you'd call it. It was some sort of entity that had been locked down for a very long period of time.
What do you mean by an entity
locked
down?
Okay. Well, when they started to do I was stripped naked, and when they started to do this ritual, there was some form of sex magic going on in the ritual, and then I felt something, I heard sounds, and I felt something being placed into my body.
Now, before we get there, when you say what sort of creature, what's a long time, any idea?
Well, I saw it in my mind's eye, and what I saw in my mind's eye was an enormous sort of a minotaur-looking being with two horns, muscular, red, green, and it had been shackled, had been chained by its ankles, chained here like this, and I could smell burning rock. I could smell it very, 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 very strongly, but I couldn't move. Okay, then I saw whatever was going on, then was projected and put in, layered slowly over with the words that were being said. I heard chanting and words that were being said that was layered into, that somehow attached to my chakra energy points, because I was at a weak point. Generally, when you're at your weakest point is when they'll go for it and do it. Then I blacked out, nothing more. The next thing I know, I'm sitting on a couch. I'm sitting back on a couch, and I feel extremely powerful. I feel like I want to jump up and run a marathon. I felt so strong. Now the woman came in and she said to me, "Max, you haven't been doing too well. Why don't you take a drink of this?" I go, "What is it?" She said, "It's electrolytes, and it's this, and it's that," and it was bubbling, and it was in a cup like that. And I had a feeling inside of me that said, "Do not drink this, because if you drink it, it's going to reinforce whatever has been done, and you will be stuck." So I was sitting there with it for about 5 or 10 minutes, and she was saying, "Why haven't you drank it? Why haven't you drank it?" And I sipped it, and it tasted unusual. She came in again, and I spilt it all everywhere on the ground. She panicked like that, went left, went back, and made another one, and brought it in. And this time I did drink it. And after I drank it, I was sitting there for more. I felt like the feelings I had were like I could get up, I could lift up. I had extreme strength. Okay? So I was left there. Then the other guy, whose name is James.
Could you actually lift things up?
Yes. Yes,
Right.
I felt like
That's
my
important.
strength has increased by 5-10 times.
So you essentially seem to have been programmed with the strength of a minotaur.
And
the minotaur being half human, half bull?
Yes. Then they brought me some food, okay? They said, "Look, you've got to eat." When I tried to eat a sandwich, they brought me a Subway of all things. When I took a bite of the Subway tasted like burning metal. Every time I took a bite out of it, it tasted like burning metal. So I spat it out and put it on the ground. Now I asked myself in my head what's going on, and then something said to me, you're tasting that because the thing that has been placed inside of you has been biting on these chains for thousands and thousands of years, and now you have taken on that inside of you, so everything is going to taste like that. But not to worry, it's only going to last 3 days and it'll be gone and you'll feel fine again. So this that went on 2 hours later. After that, something happened and my body went rigid, and whatever was inside of me was rejected and left. And then I felt it walked out. I mean, it left me, and
how did it do? It
sort of like, I felt whatever it was couldn't stick, or didn't stick, and sort of moved out like that. At that point, this guy James Chandler brought a picture of my somebody who's related to me over, and showed me this picture, and then they said, if it doesn't stick in you, it will certainly stick in him. And don't worry about that, it's failed for you. So then, as it's failed, then you need to be taken out. And so then I got this terrible fear that I'm
going to kill you.
Yes. And so this went on, and I went back into the other room and crashed out and fell asleep again. When I fell asleep again, there was two officers, what seemed like Nazi officers, standing either side of me. And
what uniforms did they have?
They had the old World War II uniforms, from what I can understand, the stereotypical Nazi World War II uniforms, and they were standing either side of me. And they had told me that what's going on right now is that there have been 100-year war battles for the last 1,000 years. And at the turn of every century, these wars are won or lost. And each time, and that he said that this particular faction had been winning for time after time after time after time. They said they set up all of the Formula One wins, all the World Cup wins were all set up to show how much in power they are.
Yeah.
Okay, and
it's interesting that a lot of horse racing things seem to have magical logos on them.
Yes.
In horse racing.
Yeah, and it's basically a ritual every time. But they showed me the seals over where they'd won. So they were gold seals, one on top of the other, on top of the other. And they said that the final battle is now happening now, and that they were already in a position to win. And they were thanking me. And I said, well, look, I don't know. I haven't done anything. I don't know anything about it. And they said, because you don't remember yet. Then I crashed out of sleep again. I haven't ever talked about this, Miles. I crashed out of sleep again. Then there was a thing, it looked like a gargoyle, but it was as big as this room, and had black wings, like bat wings. Picked me up like this, pulled me back away from the earth like that. So I saw the earth like this. There were rings around the earth, different colored rings around the earth. And this thing pointed out each one of these was thought prisons, were a thought prison. And he said, it doesn't matter which one of the people on this planet get caught up. It doesn't matter which thought prison they get caught up in, whether it's Scientology, whether it's Christianity, whether it's atheism, it doesn't make any difference. As long as you are magnetically drawn to one of them, we have you. And he explained how all the thought prisons were layered around the planet. And he explained how they were made, and
how were they made?
They were made with the will of the creator beings that want to keep this place together.
So that is the will of the Archon, or what? Is her name, or does it make any difference if there's a name?
This particular group, I feel the ones who I was talking to were connected to the Alpha Draconis star system. And I do believe that the Aldebaran group and that the Alpha Draconis group are at war. And I believe that it's been an ongoing war for eons and eons and eons. And the Aldebaran group, which is the bullseye, which in the Taurus constellation, where you see the left red eye, that's why you have this symbol all the time. It's an acknowledgement to the Aldebaran people. It's called the Royal Star. All of the British royal family are directly connected to the Aldebaran group. When you're talking bad or good or evil, or it's a little difficult at that point, because I think it's perspective of the person. You know, what is bad or good when it comes to that. I think they feel what they're doing is good.
Well, since they're not actually humans, it's from a human perspective.
Exactly. Yes. So they have been using the sun, which is Helios, which is the real name for the sun. The sun, Helios, is the entrance point to get into this 3D realm here. So they're using that as a vortex in-out point.
Now that's the significance of the 39 steps. But also Saturn, I think you'd mentioned earlier that Saturn was our original sun.
Well, Saturn was the original sun, yes. Yeah. And Saturn, yes. And Saturn got pushed out. It was, in truth, a more efficient sun and a better sun. But then they caught that sun and imprisoned it. The ring around the sun, the ring around Saturn, is an imprisonment. It's imprisoned. Saturn isn't bad. Saturn is another word for where they take Satan from, because it's the controlling force. It's Capricorn.
But is this related to the ring makers of Saturn?
Yes, and Lord of the Rings, and the principle is that. So the ring, one ring to rule them all, would be the ring that is around Saturn.
Which is, of course, was a key thing in 2001 and all.
Yes. So there were no planes that hit the building. They were holograms.
Why do you switch to that?
Because I was just thinking about 2001, and they were just testing Project Bluebeam out as far as they could. There wasn't even a missile. It was.
What was Project Bluebeam? There's an awful lot of stuff about Project Bluebeam.
Project Bluebeam originally, they've been trying to do it for a while, because Michael Talbot wrote that fantastic book, The Holographic Universe, and it gives absolute proof that what this particular frequency we're living in is totally holographic, and you can build here through will. If you want to build something, you use your will. If you know what you're doing, you can manifest it that way. That's holographic. Now, what they've been doing for a while is going to Iraq, which is actually Sumer. There is information and ornaments and the spoken word, because when they say the spoken word, it just means a certain frequency, which is the frequency that holds this together. They were attacking to go to the museums to find that out. Yes, absolutely. And there are only a few people who know how to go there and translate actually what is going on. And obviously they call it Babylon or Sumer, and they say that's the beginning, cradle of civilization. It obviously isn't. It's the cradle of what we know as the known timeline we have now.
Which is the whole point of Andrew Power's book, because the Irish, the people on these islands, were the ones who re-civilized after the Great Catastrophe, and met those who emerged from Giza.
Absolutely, I think it's important to bring up the tribe of Dan, because the tribe of Dan is the line that comes all the way through there from Atlantis. The sources from Atlantis coming through Sumer, Egypt, south of France, all the way up, and now Denmark. There's a huge amount in Denmark, but they're all in Ireland. Danny Boy is really about old Dan,
And in order to hold the Irish down, they've generated this conflict situation, which means they're too busy fighting each other rather than finding out what's going on.
Yes.
But there was this great awakening in the late 1970s, so we'll have to see what happens there. Just what's happening, and there's always this is going in 3,600 year cycles, and that's just one, and then there's even an even bigger cycle than that. And right now we're at a window opening point where you can, if you know what you're doing, get out of this cycle, this soul trapping cycle thing that we've got caught into. Which is what you referred to in the opening remarks of when we met in Canterbury.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the key was symbolic. Yeah, the key was symbolic. I found out, since my grandmother died, there were a lot of secrets in my family, and I found out a lot of different things that I really needed.
Since our last discussion, we're actually in your grandmother's apartment, is that right?
Yes, we're here now. Yeah, yes. And I came across a few things that really helped me put into perspective what's gone on with me, and the Freemasonic connections and the Templar connections, and Rosalind Chapel, and Roswell, actually, it's actually connected. So
there's a Masonic connection with this alleged crash at Roswell.
Yes.
The ritual. There always is, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, even what I really was looking at for the longest time is the Priory of Sion, and I think that if you can really break down what's going on with the Priory of Sion, you can have a very good idea about. Okay, so the Holy Grail is not a literal object. The Spear of Destiny is not a literal object. These are symbolic of. The Spear of Destiny is symbolic of a phallus, and the Holy Grail is symbolic of a vagina. So,
what's the point of the symbolism there? Really, why this great symbolism?
Because those beings,
what's the big deal?
Those beings communicate in that way. They don't communicate in the linear way. Everything that they do is done through their language is symbol. They speak through symbols. Even as hieroglyphs, they're symbols. That's how they communicate. It's a much more efficient way of getting across information than using the Western alphabet, which is crap.
Well, we'll leave it at that for the second, and we'll get into the second half.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
July 13th, take 2, take 1. A lot of people that's been interviewed in the past. Do you want to talk about any of them briefly?
You mean the people that you've interviewed before, but in the earlier bases?
Yeah.
Sure. I'd like to address anything that's come up for me.
In other words, I'm going to leave you to mention any names. If you want to do this, it's entirely up to you.
Okay, yeah, that points me in a negative light. Okay, so we can go back to really the beginning of 2010. Now, I'd spoken to Michael. I'd spoken to James Casbolt before then. I'd spoken to him really. Him and I were corresponding in 2008.
When did you first meet? Were you part of the same program?
Right. I knew James Casbolt from when we were very, very young. My first real flash memories of him were around when I was 5 or 6 years old in Brighton. And I think I've talked about the thing that happened there. But him and I remember him playing video games with him then at a specific swimming pool in Brighton, Hove actually. So yeah, I mean there's bits and pieces of memories there, but as an adult.
Before we get that far,
yes.
Are there any other children involved in this collection of children that you were part of? Yeah.
Yes, there were. None that I can say, this person, no. There were, majority of them were English, but there were a couple of American girls there too.
How many?
How many? Two that stand out to me.
2 American girls?
Yeah. One I know, one nobody else, none of the audience will know.
But they're still alive?
Yeah, yes.
Was you mentioned that a lot of them had died since then?
Well, in this is a separate group than the Brighton one, but in a separate one, I think what happened is when we were being used for, they were testing out how far they could push the trauma, because when certain sex rituals are done to a child under 5 years old, when a child is raped, and when a male child is raped, what happens is it releases the coiled serpent, or the kundalini, which is at the base of the spine, and it is opened up before it should be. Everybody has the kundalini raised at some point, maybe not everybody, but right. So it means coiled serpent, and it sits at the base of the spine, and when the serpent uncoils, it goes up the spinal column like this and comes to the brain stem there, and you come to an enlightened understanding. So you become an enlightened one, or the Illuminati, the illuminated one. When a male child is raped before the age of 5, it goes through something called the vasovagal shock. Now, when it's penetrated, the coiled snake uncoils very, very quickly, all the way up the spine to the top of the spine and explodes here in the brainstem, which then shatters the consciousness into many, many pieces, like smashing a mirror. Then,
so all this all this kind of abuse that's been happening with many politicians, allegedly, a lot of stuff coming forward now about British political parties, British media, British thing and all that. There's a huge amount of stuff coming out now. Is that all part of that?
You cannot be in a high-level person in the Illuminati unless you have been illuminated by the Key of Solomon. Now they call this rape. They call rape like that to a young boy the Key of Solomon. And when that happens, when it bursts up here, it shatters. Then you are able to program these different altars. But not only that, when it shatters there, you have a photographic memory. Somehow it raises the IQ. It does a number of different things. Everybody who is in a position of power now has had the Key of Solomon used on them, so they have been raped in that way.
Which means that the whole structure of power in Britain,
yes,
the UK, probably Ireland, because of the recent terrible things about 900 children, 800 children ritually massacred in Ireland, that means the whole power elite has been...
Yes. Yes, and they won't have you in the power elite unless it's been done to you. Just off sidetrack, Barack Obama, his middle name is Hussein. Well, Saddam Hussein was a major handler and programmer. He was such a high programmer that he would program some of our very high power position people through world leaders. And Saddam Hussein programmed Barack Obama with that way. That's why he has...
Do you know any others he programmed?
No, but I know that him and Hillary Clinton worked as a duo to do that. No, I don't. I mean,
Hillary Clinton...
Bill Clinton was programmed by Saddam Hussein too. All the Rhodes Scholars, all of the Rhodes Scholars have to be illuminated, have to have that done to them.
Why an Arab like Saddam Hussein?
Well, he had technology. He had hold of technology. He had hold of Stargate technology. That's one of the reasons why he was at one point he was one of the most powerful men on the planet. And the technology that he had was off the charts.
Now this is very similar to what John Irwin has said in his book, One Step Beyond the 16.
Yes, yeah.
Amongst other things.
Yes, he had that. It's sort of similar to there's a movie called Contact, and that spinning thing there which is able to shoot you through to different dimensions. So he had something similar to that. There's a few of them around, but he had control of that. He comes from, he's a direct descendant of Genghis Khan, and that bloodline, the Genghis Khan bloodline, who incidentally had the most powerful, he owned the most land of anybody on this planet ever. Even more, I mean, the British Empire was secondary even to Genghis Khan's empire. And whatever...
Now, it's something that's been maintained on horseback. That seems to be a pretty big deal.
Right, because in truth they weren't just using horseback. I mean,
what were they using?
They were using interdimensional technology. Yeah. And Genghis Khan bred with multiple women, so he could continue that bloodline. Which
is that what Casbolt's doing, by doing all this contact with women, by having some kind of psychic link? There's been discussion that it's some kind of virus, thought virus he's instilling in these people.
Yeah.
Whatever's controlling him.
Well, I think that when the wars on Mars went on, there was a 100,000-year war, and a lot of us were involved in this 100,000-year war. And while this was going on...
Between who?
Between who? Okay, well, so the basis of it was between the Lyrans, or the Nordics, and the Dracos, because the Dracos are chasing the Nordics around because they want their DNA, because that allows them to maintain the holographic projection of a human being whilst they're here. So the 100,000, this was a long war. Eventually, at the end of it, what happened was that they had to call a ceasefire because so many were killed on either side. But there was a disease that got out, a virus that got out during this war, and a lot of us who were very involved in what was going on, generals, commanders who were up there, contracted this virus.
I mean, it seems as it must have been created.
It was created virus, yeah, and a lot of us contracted this virus, and what this virus was, some of us took it on board, took it and merged it, superimposed it into our own physical body to try and overcome it. And then now a lot of us still have it. I have it in me still now.
What does it do? What is it?
Well, it's vampirical. It's sort of like I mean, it's like a stereotypical vampire.
So what does that mean? You shapeshift and your teeth go long and you bite people at night?
It means that, well, yeah, but only somebody who was able to see or sensitive to that would be able to see it. It's not as if I would change now and into a monster like that. So if you're sensitive, you can see it.
What is the true shape then?
Of this particular one? Well, from this particular vampirical virus, they tend to look, this vampire sort of thing looks a bit like that old stereotypical vision of Nosferatu. Very, very pale skin, bald head, sort of dark eyes and sharp teeth, like that.
From the original movie?
Yes, like that. Looks sort of like
original silent movies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it has the ability. It doesn't have a core here. It doesn't have a central core where it maintains itself. It sort of has an opening here, like a void. So it doesn't maintain its own thing. So it doesn't maintain its own energy force. It has to take from others to maintain its holographic projection. And a number of us were infected by this particular virus that happened there.
Now, why is that going to be a thing that would cause harm to people? What's the point?
Well, because
of
it
that?
becomes like a parasite, and then it starts to spread, and more and more and more. So it's like a parasitic virus that's on the face of this planet.
So how does it spread? By contact, blood?
Yeah, well, when you start, I mean, when you drain somebody else, you sort of, there's never really a drain. When it comes to vampires, they don't just take. There is a exchange. So they will take energy field or blood from another, but then they will exchange it with their own energy. So that's why a lot of the times victims of a vampire will start falling in love with the vampire,
yeah,
quote unquote vampire, because they will feel the feelings that the vampire feels.
Yeah.
And so they'll.
I mean, I have to say that seems very similar to two people that I know, two women I know. So
that it becomes like a bond like you can't even ever explain, an obsessive bond. And then what I think is they're very careful about is, but if you completely drain them, then their personality is wiped. And then they become one of them. So then the void is within them, and then they have to continue to take from others to maintain. So it's a virus. I mean, literally like a virus. For me, what I have come to the conclusion now, what happened with me is I absorbed whatever that energy was, whatever that consciousness was, into myself. And that's why when I was born here, or on paper when I was born here, I had that line go down the center of me, which was red and yellow. So the left side of me is a higher vibrational Syrian being, a blue Syrian being, and the other side of me is whatever this virus is that I've taken. And it's been a constant internal war to try and which one wants to take over the sides, each side of it. So if the Nosferatu type thing takes over, then I become a complete, whatever that does, which is continues with the virus.
Does it happen on full moons and you've got to...
Oh, well, I have extremely weird things happen to me on full moons, yeah. Actually, it happened yesterday.
I mean, I'm being a bit silly, just...
No, why wouldn't it? Because when it's a full moon, that's when the energy... I mean, it's a construct. The moon is a construct in and of itself. It's like the Death Star, or it's a construct anyway.
So when you're talking about the moon being a complete artificial construct?
Yeah, and it definitely is. It's hollow and it's an artificial construct, yeah.
Any other information you know about it?
Well, they're using the moon as a transfer point to harvest.
Yeah.
So you
It's interesting. John Lear says something like that.
when you die, when you're dying here, when you quote unquote die, you are going to a transfer point, and there's actually a machine. There's actually a giant machine up there, which then they do a lot of rituals up there as well, which then
Who's
wipes.
they?
Who is it? Well, the majority of the moon is now run by the Fourth Reich, but there are.
So are you saying that spoof movie
is actually quite right on?
Yeah.
Yeah. They always like to tell you the truth with a spin of bullshit in the middle, but and then you're sent right back.
It's got enough of an atmosphere for people to walk around with very minimal.
Yeah. Yes. And huge underground stations and high technology and. So what you've got is the Saturn as we have now with the ring around it, projecting out a false reality pockets. False reality. It hits the moon, and the moon is working like an amplifier, which then creates and projects the false reality onto this planet. Right. So we're living an inverted reality here. It's not how it doesn't.
What do you mean by an inverted reality?
Well, an inverted reality in the sense that you succeed by doing bad. You succeed by fucking over. Excuse my language. You succeed by screwing over your fellow man. If you're if that's if you want to go along with that. I don't care if you succeed. I'd rather not succeed and be okay and take care of people I love. So whether or not success is not. I'm not interested in that. What I'm trying to do is change the frequency here, so that ceases to exist anymore.
You're talking about the moon.
The moon being an amplifier, yes. The moon being an amplifier, and yes.
Well, it's interesting that they've announced, NASA's announced a contract to go to Mars with Boeing.
Yeah.
They're using a very similar rocket to the Saturn V. So that seems like a load of hooey for a start.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Only 2 solid rocket boosters. I'm being an anorak now, but you're going to launch the kind of weight that you expect to lift. To go to Mars, you'd expect rather more than just a big tin can tank and 2 solid rocket boosters, because that essentially is all the shuttle had. Yeah.
Then they've got the jump rooms in on Sepulveda Boulevard, which is in Los Angeles too. Which is right. I lived on Sepulveda Boulevard at the ages of 5, 6, and 7, and I didn't go to school at that period of time. My parents didn't put me in school, and I spent a lot of time by myself. And there are jump rooms at 999 Sepulveda Boulevard, which was maybe 2 blocks away from where I used to live. And
the nines are significant.
Well, it's just, as I said, everything is reversal. So, you have 666, but what really is 666? It's not quite what.
It's the interdimensional gate.
Right, and it's also talking about raw human being. The carbon atoms, 6 carbon atoms, 6 oxygen atoms, 6, I think.
Oh, right. I didn't explain that.
It's the 666 is also it's also explaining to you time. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day. So you have 666 there. It's old father time. And what creates time here? Saturn. Saturn is manifesting the false reality of time here. So the big illusion is time.
We have such big people in the past. The land of the giants.
Yes.
Huge humans.
I'm not sure that they're gone. I just think the holographic projection is not suited for them for us to see them what they really look like. I think they're still here. There's an island where they have all the dinosaurs there already. They're still there.
You're talking about the movies now.
But that's a real place. They have that.
Where is that?
Well, it's an island off the South Pacific, from what George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg is SS. George Lucas is a CIA insider. And
you're saying that the good Jew like George Lucas is he Jew?
George Lucas isn't. No.
Oh, sorry, I talked about Spielberg. So.
And I'm not saying anything bad about these guys.
All these things are relative, and really,
absolutely,
the good bad thing is really academic, and really, if you apply those sort of terms, you're going to miss the point.
Absolutely. Yeah. With the dinosaurs on it, well, they're still doing experiments and testing them out. They're testing out what the abilities are, and if they can take certain parts of DNA from these dinosaurs and place them into human beings, what extra attributes?
Just continuing with the stuff that Barry King's father discovered in World War II.
Which was?
A lab with strange-looking humans being used for some kind of transgenetics or some kind of...
Right, well, you've got under Dulce, you've got the 7 levels under Dulce, where Nightmare Hall, which I think is the 6th level, where they've just put everything you could possibly imagine together. You know, testing out things. That's not ever going to happen again. This will never ever happen again.
Why?
Trapping souls, because universal law now is not allowing it. It's gone too far.
I get the impression from other sources that what's been going on is so illegal.
It's so illegal. It's being stopped. A lot of these ones out in Arizona and Nevada now have been stopped, and because you've got people souls trapped in machines, where they cannot stop, keep coming back and back again for torturous lifetime after torturous lifetime. And this has been, you know, over and over again. And, you know, and you talk about, well, okay, well then, you know, you want to leave? How are you going to leave here? Kill yourself? You kill yourself, you're not leaving. You're in even more trouble. So we're all now trying to find out how we get out of this prison without walls. What do? We look inside and understand we have to look inside ourselves and understand what's going on. Because really, all of this stuff is just a reflection of what we think about ourselves.
So the 9/11 thing is a mechanism for controlling that.
That was a huge Stargate ritual, and between those two buildings, when that happened, it opened an enormous. It was a Crowley ritual, and it was connected to the Boleskine house other doorway that he didn't bother to close. But the
one in Lockness.
Yeah, he didn't close it. He couldn't close it.
Or did he not close it, or couldn't close it?
He couldn't close it. It was too much for him. He couldn't. Piled in all these lower fourth dimensional beings that are here now.
I didn't want to take part in any of that, so I stood well back.
I mean, because these things are. We're talking about the Goetia demons, the high Goetia demons that were locked away for a long time.
And why are they called a high Goetia demon?
Well, you know, in the 72 Goetia demons are ranked sort of similar to our aristocracy here. They have dukes and princes and kings and like that. And Crowley wanted to release them here, and the 9/11 ritual released a lot of them like that, because they want to create hell on earth. They want to create, well, hell is not the word they'd use, but they want to create the lower fourth into 3D here.
Yeah.
Because they like that. That's what they like. They like that. They're slowly introducing, so making it more acceptable that pedophilia is okay, more acceptable that heinous crimes are okay.
Yeah, I think this is important, that a lot of real bad guys are given the sympathy thing on TV. And we don't want to push that analogy too far in the present circumstances. Right,
yeah, there's a few names I could say, but I'm not going to say any names because, you know, we don't want to do that.
So there's a lot of basically demonology. What does it really mean? These are other types of dimensional entities?
Yeah.
They've got their own worlds to live in?
They don't. They're just off this frequency. They're in pockets, they're in a pocket just off this frequency. But they were locked down a long time ago because they caused such havoc and mayhem. The dark sorcerers. Is
this what you referred to earlier as going to oblivion, but you can recover?
The void. You mean? Yeah, they were locked in the void. In Superman 2, the original one, not the crap remake, you see Jor-El locked in these 3 particular demons in this thing like this, and they were locked away. Well, that's symbolic of a lot of these Goetia demons being locked down. Now, when you use Goetia magic, each one represents a different thing, maybe for money, maybe for food, maybe for power. So if you know what you're doing, it's necromancy. If you know how to, necromancy is about the summoning and raising of these particular things. You can summon them.
Jimmy Savile's stuff?
Yes. He was actually very, very high up.
Well, he obviously must be because of the clearance he obviously got.
Yeah, very high clearance.
Which is a big alarm bell for the whole echelons again. You know,
absolutely. But you can summon these, and if you do what you're supposed to do, if you do what they say, and you know, they'll do you favors. And
that's at a cost.
Oh yeah, in the end it's at a cost. Yeah, you're selling your soul.
And
they'll have you after.
Yeah, and that means short-term gain, long-term loss.
You can even have what seems like long-term. You can have a lifetime gain. But
yeah, but after that,
you're always going to lose somebody close to you, because they always want somebody. They always want to take something from you that's close to your heart.
What happens to those people who are taken?
Well, they're dealing with going to the underworld, or whatever you want to call that, lower fourth, until they can capture enough energy to re-get into a new body again. They're about staying here. They don't want to go anywhere else or raise vibration. They want to stay here, so they're fighting to get back into a body again and do the same thing again.
Which is why we got all this thing, cyborgs, you know, be able to have machines which last.
Yeah.
You know, well past the human lifestyle.
Yeah. But there's a way of doing it where you can rebuild the flesh and blood again as well. You don't even have to have cyborgs. You can do it with, especially with the cold-blooded, like the reptilian cold-blooded. It's much easier to build the building blocks of them than it is the mammals.
Well, that's interesting. That one of the things that Casbolt mentioned was the certain people in charge of certain agencies had lived a long time.
Yeah. Yes.
Very, you know, like 100 years plus.
Yes.
Probably more.
Way more. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's a lot to do with it's the blood. It's being able to. You can just change your blood again, or you can take somebody else's blood and maintain youth. Keep maintaining youth. But what they're desperately after is the Holy Grail, which is which is the Priory of Sion protected for the longest time. You can get hold of that. That's eternal life. But the Holy Grail is really blood. It's blood from a certain stream.
I mean, the Ark of the Covenant.
That's a different thing, yes.
Gold holds the souls.
Yes, and gold is soul energy, yes.
Gold is soul energy?
Yes. The more gold you have, the more soul energy you've got.
Right.
That's why they're obsessed with it.
It's very interesting. Somebody I know recently had a lot of really yellow gold, where you could pure gold.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, very powerful stuff.
Yeah. Okay, you haven't really mentioned. Okay, we've mentioned. Is there anybody else you want to mention?
Yeah. I think it's important that I bring up Anya Briggs, because, you know, there's been a lot that she's said over, you know, the last few years, and you know, she's on the surface she's a reasonably nice girl. I don't know her. I don't really know her at all. My initial connection with her was that in 2010, James Casbolt wrote a list. I think it was a list of about 10 people on it, and on the list what he wrote were a list of people that were involved in MK projects, this project, that project. So, you know, it's kind of like, okay, well,
any of these lists got any credence at all?
Okay, so I looked at the list, and first of all, I was like, okay, well, thank God, finally, I can. There's somebody else here that perhaps I can relate to. So this is a good thing, because I felt isolated and alone at the time. So I looked through the list, nothing. You know, I didn't contact anyone at first. Then the next day, I had a message from Anya Briggs, and she wrote underneath a picture of mine, and she said, "Wow, you look so familiar. It's wonderful to be in contact with you. I feel like I've been biblical with you." And
what does that mean?
Actually, at the time, I didn't know what that meant. But you know, after like asking, if it means I feel like I've slept with you or I had sex with you. So I wrote back to Anya, and I said, "Oh, you know, wow, I don't remember you," because I didn't remember her at all. But I said, "What do you remember about me?" And she corresponded with me a lot, and she sent me all these things about her remembering me in the Civil War, I think, and she sent me pictures.
What's the American Civil War?
Yes. Yeah.
There seems to be an awful lot of that going around.
She said and when she was telling me, I sort of felt, you know, like that seemed familiar. So we wrote back and forth for a while, and
why would an Englishman be involved with the Civil War?
Because it has nothing to do with you know, what country you're from, does it? Really, you continue on and on. Has nothing to do with that. So we corresponded back and forth, and I was just very happy to have someone to talk to who sort of was in a similar position to me. I'm a survivor from these projects, and so is she. You don't tell somebody not to talk to someone. I have an opinion, I have a voice that needs to be heard. I would never say don't talk to Anya or anybody else. Everybody needs to be heard. She is acting, you know, like a woman scorned, and I don't have a problem with her. I don't have a problem with her. I have a problem with her slanderously speaking about me. But in general, she's a human being. She's suffered, and you know, we're all trying to come together to try and work this stuff out.
Finally, just this little bit of other people or anybody else.
I was.
That you want to talk about? No pressure. Just
Sarah,
totally.
Sarah, you know, I spoke to Sarah Steiner a few times. A lot of her stories paralleled mine, and
again, she's English and she's been in these programs. She mentions James Casbolt and lots
sure,
of stuff and lots
sure.
of different things.
I sort of remember her. Sarah Steiner is a lot more familiar to me than.
And she claims that James was actually one of the people who was I can't quite get the term, but responsible for I can't really get the term, but James is involved.
Yeah, and I sort of remember Sarah too, and we'd spoken before, and she said it feels like I'm sort of like her and I are brother and sister.
So she wasn't one of the people in your original.
Now I don't know that for sure, but that is possible. I don't know that for sure. I don't remember Anya from any of this stuff. I don't ever remember her. Yeah, outside.
I mean,
of
we're
that.
not talking adults in their 30s now.
What's that? Yeah.
I mean, this is, you know.
Yeah, I think Anya's always, you know, mid-40s or something, but
Yeah.
Sarah Stanger's.
I mean, the basis thing, I've been doing this for over 20 years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these programs have been going on a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
There are phases of it, yes, absolutely. Yeah. There was one particular one that cornered the group of children that were born in the 50s and 60s, and then the mid-70s seems to be when they sort of changed it a little bit. Mannequin came out in 1972,
the forerunner to Mannequin was Puppet Master.
Yes, Puppet Master, yes.
You're corroborating something that Barry King said 20 years ago.
Okay.